1, a plumbing and laundry efficient primer, training. This is the second in our series of 6 technical webinars being put on as part of the Hotel Challenge training series. I'm Laura Wetzel, a supporting contractor to EPA's WaterSense program, and I will be acting as the moderator during this presentation. So let me start by introducing the 3 presenters you'll be hearing from today. Hosting this webinar is Stephanie Tanner. Stephanie is the lead engineer for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's WaterSense program. She is responsible for all technical aspects of the development of labeled products, including setting efficiency and performance criteria, as well as managing the certification process. Prior to EPA, she managed a water efficiency program for federal facilities and wrote a number of guides to water efficiency for federal facilities. She holds a BS in Marine Engineering from the Merchant Marine Academy and a Master of Engineering Management from the George Washington University. Our second speaker will be Kim Wagoner with ERG, a licensed professional engineer and also a supporting contractor to WaterSense. Kim assists EPA in developing product specifications for the WaterSense program and develops technical support for WaterSense's efforts in the commercial and institutional sectors. She also conducts water assessments for federal facilities to identify and assess their water savings opportunities. Kim has a BS in Environmental Science and an MS in Environmental Science and Engineering from Virginia Tech. And finally, we'll wrap up the presentation with a case study presented by Brandon Leister with San Antonio Water Systems on their WaterSaver Hotel program. Brandon has a Bachelor of Science degree from Texas A&M University and has worked for the San Antonio Water System for 14 years. Currently, he is the Senior Water Conservation Planner and is primarily charged with conserving water in the commercial sector of the municipality. Now I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. First, all attendees are muted to minimize background noise. And if you have a question during the presentation, please do type it into the chat box on the upper right-hand side of your screen. And we will have a dedicated time for Q&A at appropriate breaks throughout the presentation, and we'll address your questions then. Lastly, we are recording this webinar for posting on the WaterSense website. And after the webinar, please feel free to direct any of your colleagues or business contacts to this recorded training if you think it would benefit them. And we will be emailing you once it's posted, so you'll get notified that way. Now I'd like to turn it over to Stephanie Tanner to begin our presentation. Stephanie?
Thank you, Laura, for that introduction, and thank you to everyone for joining us this afternoon. I'd like to start by reviewing the agenda for this webinar. First, I'll provide a brief overview of the WaterSense program and the intent of the H2Otel challenge. And I'll discuss the main end uses of water in hotels and why you may want to reduce your water use. Then we'll go into detail about water use from restroom plumbing fixtures and guest and linen laundry. We'll discuss operations and maintenance practices that can help you reduce your water use and retrofit and replacement options for each fixture and equipment type. Then I'll ask Brandon to discuss some water-saving success stories from a few hotels that participated in the SAW's WaterSaver Hotel program. Finally, I'll do a quick recap of this webinar and discuss the schedule for the rest of the technical webinars in this series. For those of you who are not able to attend our H2O Challenge introductory webinar or the first technical webinar on water management planning and who may not be familiar with WaterSense, I'll provide a brief introduction to the program. WaterSense is a voluntary program that launched in 2006. We bring together a variety of stakeholders to promote water efficiency, provide consumers with easy ways to save water, and try to encourage innovation in manufacturing. Our goal is to reduce water use and strain on the water resources and infrastructure of this country. The WaterSense label, which is displayed here on the slide, provides a simple way for consumers to identify water-efficient products, homes, programs, and practices. More than 10,000 different models of products have earned the WaterSense label to date. This presentation is going to cover several of our labeled products, specifically toilets, urinals, faucets, and shower heads, those that you would find in public restrooms and guest bathrooms. In addition to labeling products, homes, and certification programs for irrigation professionals, we try to approach water efficiency from many angles. We've developed best management practices for areas such as commercial buildings and landscapes to help facilities design, operate, and maintain their buildings and landscapes as efficiently as possible. Our commercial BMPs are the focus for this training series. We also work with our partners and stakeholders to educate users to change behaviors that impact daily water use. As I mentioned earlier, the plumbing products that we'll be discussing today are shown on the slide. This slide also shows that we have labels for commercial premium spray valves and irrigation controllers, which are eligible for the WaterSense label. In addition, we are intending to release a draft specification for flushometer valve or commercial toilets later this year, and we are always looking for products and doing more research on other products to label. The label is generally reserved for products that use at least 20% less water and perform as well or better than their less efficient counterparts. Through 2012, WaterSense has helped consumers save a cumulative 487 billion gallons of water and over $8.9 billion in water and energy bills. We also work closely with our partner Energy Star, since water factors are included in many Energy Star specifications. To help commercial and institutional facilities understand, manage, and reduce water use, we developed WaterSense at Work, a compilation of water efficiency best management practices for commercial and institutional facilities. These BMPs provide guidance on water management planning, water use monitoring and education, sanitary fixtures and equipment, commercial kitchen equipment, outdoor water use, mechanical systems, lab and medical equipment, and on-site alternative sources of water. Product and equipment specific chapters in each of those main areas cover water efficient O&M, retrofit, and replacement recommendations. WaterSense at Work also includes case studies that highlight the water, energy, and cost savings achieved by some C&I facilities who have implemented these types of BMPs. Now that we've released the BMPs, there are labeled products available. WaterSense is beginning to work with some commercial sectors individually to promote water efficiency. This year, we're focusing on the hotel sector. This pie chart shows you how water is typically used in hotels. As you can see, approximately 30% of a hotel's water use comes from guest room sanitary use, which includes showers, faucets, and toilet use. WaterSense has labeled products that can help hotels reduce this most significant end use of water. Laundry makes up another large portion of hotel water use, and we'll talk about that today as well. Landscaping, commercial kitchens, building heating and cooling are also significant water users in hotels, and we plan to cover those topics in upcoming webinars. So, why might you want to reduce your hotel's water use? First and foremost, saving water can substantially reduce your operating costs. Water and sewer costs are rising well above inflation and show no signs of slowing down. In addition, saving water can also save energy used to heat water, and improving efficiency of equipment often reduces the maintenance costs and man-hours required for repair. While reducing your bottom line, saving water may also increase your competitive advantage. A recent survey by TripAdvisor found that 79% of travelers placed importance on choosing eco-friendly accommodations. You can also demonstrate leadership in your community, for example, by participating in programs such as this H2Otel challenge. WaterSense launched the H2Otel challenge in February of this year to encourage and assist hotels in saving water. As part of the challenge, we provide participants with the tools to act, or assess water use and savings opportunities, change products and processes to incorporate the BMPs, and track water savings. Once your hotel takes the pledge on the WaterSense website, you'll receive emails that include several items to promote your participation, including a participant logo, which you see here, websites and guest services and information on guest services for your television. Every hotel that takes the pledge will receive monthly water saving tips and reminders about WaterSense webinars. The training webinar series, including this one, walks you through the BMPs in WaterSense at Work that are applicable to hotels. And each training will feature a case study showing hotels that have implemented the specific measures to reduce their water use. Later this spring, WaterSense will release its Water Use and Savings Evaluation tool, which we call the Water Use tool. This will help hotel managers and facility personnel conduct a water assessment and evaluate and prioritize projects. Before we begin talking about plumbing products and laundry equipment, I'd like to open the floor to any questions on WaterSense, the H2Otel challenge, and any of the content presented so far.
Thanks, Stephanie. So everyone, remember that all attendees are muted to reduce background noise during this presentation. So if you have any questions, please type them into the chat box on the right of your screen, and we'll address them as they are received. All right, so Dendra Best wants to know, for people just starting to promote the hotel challenge, is there a deadline for participation?
No, there's not. The challenge just will run through all of 2014.
Great. So you can start participating anytime this year. And our tools will also be available on the website, on the WaterSense website for a long time, so you can refer to them. And Rodney would like to know, as I understand, the water use tool is the tracking tool for the hotel challenge?
No, the water use tool is just to help you identify and assess your targets for water savings and prioritize your projects. We're not really tracking water use through the challenge. It's more of an educational challenge. But if you feel like you would like to track your water use, you can use the tool to collect your data and organize your materials, and then you can easily translate that information into Energy Star's Portfolio Manager, and they have a much more sophisticated way of tracking facility water use at the hotel level, at the individual hotel level, and even for multiple buildings in a portfolio.
Great. And is it free for hotels to get involved?
It's absolutely free. So there's no cost to hotels to participate, to get any of our materials, or to use our logo.
Wonderful.
You just have to take the pledge, which basically means you agree to use the logo and the materials that we have.
That sounds good. And there are a few other questions coming in. So another person has a question about the water use tool and wondering, does it enable you to calculate water savings, energy savings, and the payback for all projects?
Not all projects, just the ones for which we have a lot, for which WaterSense has a lot of default information for you to use, and for which you can collect a lot of information from your hotel. So mostly it will have information on paybacks and all of the things you mentioned for restrooms, guest rooms, laundry, some kitchen equipment, and things like that. But things like irrigation, it's just very difficult to sort of pin that down, and but it'll help you get a little better sense of what's going on in your facility for those things.
Wonderful. And Stephen is
Laura,
wondering,
if I may, we're going to have an upcoming training on the water use tool, so people will get a lot more information about how to use it and what it covers in that. That'll be like in later April.
Great. That sounds great. And Stephen wants to know, how can a technology that reduces commercial laundry water usage, can that get approved to use the WaterSense label?
Not at this time, no. We only have the label available on the products that were shown on the slide. If people are interested in having new technologies labeled, we're always looking to assess new technologies. You can contact the WaterSense helpline and let them know what the product is, and we'll take a look.
Sounds good. And can only hotels have access to the water tool, or could a utility have access to the water tool?
anybody can use the tool once it's posted. We're still finishing it up, so it's not posted yet.
So it'll be available on the WaterSense website.
It will be available on the website for anyone to access, yes.
Great. And this recorded webinar will also be available on the WaterSense website as well in the near future.
Yes. So please encourage your colleagues to come back to the website and take a look if they weren't able to make it today.
That sounds good. Well, thank you all for those great questions. And now I'll hand it back to Stephanie to begin covering our BMPs for restroom fixtures and laundry equipment.
Thank you, Laura. Okay. As I mentioned in the introduction, restroom water use makes up about 30% of a hotel's water use on average. This water use may be attributed to the sanitary fixtures in your guest rooms, including toilets, faucets, and shower heads, which would include the types of fixtures you would see in a residential bathroom. You may also have public restrooms located near your pool or in the lobby, and staff restrooms which have a more commercial style fixture like flushometer valve toilets, urinals, and faucets meant for hand washing only. In the next few slides, we'll review water efficiency BMPs for the types of restroom fixtures you may find in your hotel. The Energy Policy Act of 1992 put into place restrictions on water use for some plumbing fixtures, including toilets, that went into effect in 1994. Prior to that date, fixtures used to have much higher flush volumes, some flushing as much as 3.5 to 7 gallons per flush. Newer toilets installed after 1994 have a maximum flush volume of about 1.6 gallons. In 2007, WaterSense released a specification for tank-type toilets. WaterSense labeled models use 20% less water than the standard set by EPA, flushing at no more than 1.28 gallons per flush. The first way to reduce your water use in your hotel is to implement proper operation and maintenance procedures that are centered around water efficiency. O&M changes are often easy to implement and require little to no capital cost. For tank-type toilets, periodically check to ensure fill valves are working properly and that the water level is set correctly. You may also want to consider posting some signage in your guest rooms to remind guests not to flush inappropriate objects like feminine products, if you have problems with toilet overflow or drain line clogging in particular. Also, remind them to report leaks or continually running toilets. Finally, make sure you identify and fix leaks as soon as you can. While staff are checking fill valves and tank water levels, you may also want to use a dye tablet to determine if water is leaking from the tank into the bowl. WaterSense hosted its annual Fix a Leak Week last week to encourage its partners and stakeholders to identify and fix leaks. Although geared toward fixing leaks in the home, there are several resources on the website that are useful for finding and fixing leaks in commercial buildings. There really aren't any suitable retrofits for tank-type toilets, so you should avoid retrofitting your existing toilets with displacement dams or bags, early closing flappers or valves with different flush volumes, since these add-ons may result in poor performance. Your best bet for reducing your toilet water use is to replace an old, high-flushing tank-type toilet in your hotel with a newer WaterSense labeled toilet that flushes at 1.28 gallons per flush or less. WaterSense labeled toilets must meet waste removal requirements outlined in the specification, so you can be confident that they'll perform as well or better than your older models. Moving on to shower heads. Shower heads installed before EPAC requirements were enacted may flow between 3.5 and 5 gallons per minute. Those installed after 1994 will flow at 2.5 gallons per minute or less. WaterSense set a maximum flow rate for shower heads to receive the label at 2 gallons per minute, a 20% savings from EPAC. At first, you'll want to tackle O&M. If possible, verify that your hot and cold water lines for the shower head are routed through a valve that meets temperature control performance requirements. This will avoid varying fluctuation in shower temperature if there's another draw on the hot water or cold water lines. The flow rate of that valve should match the flow rate in your shower head. Especially if you live in an area with hard water, you'll want to periodically inspect your shower head for scale and remove any buildup that may be impeding the flow or performance. As always, make sure you train your housekeeping staff to identify and report leaky shower heads and fix any reported leaks immediately. These leaks can add up quickly. Since shower heads are relatively inexpensive, replacing old shower heads is much more economical and practical than retrofitting them to reduce the flow rate. Shower head replacements usually provide a really good payback. If you want to consider replacing any shower head with flow rates of 2.5 gallons per minute or higher with WaterSense labeled models. In addition to using less water, WaterSense labeled shower heads have to meet spray coverage and spray force requirements. These performance criteria were developed through a user satisfaction study and are designed to ensure satisfaction with the showering experience. So, guest faucets. Faucets are used in private and public settings for different reasons. Private use faucets, like those in your home or in your hotel's guest room, are used for more than just simple hand washing. They include tasks like shaving, washing your face, brushing your teeth, maybe even rinsing out something. Faucets used in public spaces like airports, office buildings, and your hotel lobby are typically only used for hand washing. For that reason, faucets used in private settings may need to flow at a higher rate than those used in public spaces. Older faucets in your guest room may flow at 2.5 gallons per minute or higher, while EPAC compliant models will flow at 2.2 gallons per minute or less. WaterSense labeled faucets, on the other hand, are intended for private use, and those flow at 1.5 gallons per minute or less. Faucets are notoriously leaky, so fixing leaks is the primary O&M practice you should keep your eye on. A leaky faucet dripping at 1 drip per second can waste nearly 3,000 gallons of water per year, which is equivalent to the amount of water needed to take more than 180 showers. Identifying and correcting those leaks quickly can result in pretty significant water savings for your hotel. If your faucets are sensor operated, you may want to periodically check and adjust the sensors to make sure they are turning on and off appropriately instead of running for several seconds after the use is complete. Faucets are the one place where a retrofit is easy, inexpensive, and just plain smart. You can retrofit your faucet by replacing the aerator with a WaterSense labeled faucet aerator. Faucet aerators just twist off and on. It's very simple to install an aerator on most faucets. If you have a faucet that doesn't have a twist-off aerator, consider replacing the entire faucet body with a WaterSense labeled model. WaterSense labeled models must meet a minimum flow rate to ensure performance in all private use settings. Now, I would like to turn it over to Kim Wagner, who will walk us through some key B&Ps that you should consider for your public restrooms and on-site laundries.
Thank you, Stephanie. Now that we've talked about what you might find in your guest rooms, we're going to discuss the opportunities for reducing water use from the fixtures you might see in your public or staff restrooms. Flushometer valve toilets, like the one shown in this picture, may flush as high as 7 gallons per flush if installed prior to EPAC. EPAC-compliant flushometer valve toilets flush at just 1.6 gallons per flush. WaterSense is currently working on a specification for flushometer valve toilets will ensure that labeled models use at least 20% less water than the EPAC-compliant models. Proper O&M is also important for flushometer valve toilets. At least annually, inspect your diaphragm or piston valves and replace any worn parts. If you're going to replace valve inserts, make sure that the replacement part has a rated flush volume that's consistent with the rating on the existing bowl. The flush volume of the bowl is usually marked on the china fixture, and the flush volume of the valve replacement is usually marked on its box. Periodically check to ensure the control stop is set to fully open during normal operation. In addition, make sure the flush volume adjustment screw has not been modified from the manufacturer's specified settings. Check that the water pressure serving each floor of your hotel meets the minimum requirements specified by the toilet manufacturer. In some cases, if the pressure is too low, it can impact your flushing performance. Also check that your automatic sensors are programmed properly to avoid double or phantom flushing. And of course, respond to any reports of leaky or continuously flushing toilets. And consider posting signage asking guests not to flush inappropriate things if that's a problem for your hotel. There are both retrofit and replacement options that are suitable for flushometer valve toilets. 1.6 gallon per flush toilets can be retrofit with dual flush conversion kits that allow for heavy and light flush settings. This may not be an appropriate retrofit option for all toilets flushing higher than 1.6 gallons per flush though. If you have old and efficient flushometer valve toilets, consider replacing them with 1.28 gallon per flush models. WaterSense labeled models, which are expected in the future, will use at least 20% less than the federal standard and will be required to meet waste removal and flush performance requirements. Some of your public or staff restrooms may have urinals installed. Older non-EPAC compliant urinals can flush between 1.5 and 3 gallons, while EPAC compliant models flush at 1 gallon or less. WaterSense labeled models use 50% less water than those meeting the federal standard, flushing at 0.5 gallons or less. Similar to the O&M suggested for flushometer valve toilets, you'll want to inspect your urinal flush valves annually. Also check and adjust automatic sensors and ensure your water pressure is sufficient throughout your hotel and respond quickly to any leaks. For replacement and retrofit options, make sure that the rated flush volume of any replacement flush valve insert matches the specified flush volume of your urinal fixture. You can also consider replacing any older and efficient urinals with WaterSense labeled models or consider non-water urinals. WaterSense doesn't currently label non-water urinals, but they may be a good option as long as your hotel can meet the guidelines outlined in the IAPMO Green Plumbing and Mechanical Code Supplement. As we mentioned before, faucets are used in slightly different ways in private and public use settings. Therefore, the flow rate requirements may be different depending on where the faucet is located. The Energy Policy Act requirement for all faucets is the same, 2.2 gallons per minute. However, the National Plumbing Codes and Standards set a maximum flow rate of 0.5 gallon for public use faucets, since public use faucets are used primarily for simple hand washing only. As with your guest room faucets, you'll want to make sure you fix any leaks in your public restroom faucets quickly. And if you have them, check and adjust those automatic sensors to ensure they're programmed for optimum efficiency. Faucets in your public spaces with screw-off aerators can be easily retrofit with 0.5 gallon per minute aerators or laminar flow devices. If you plan to replace your entire faucet fixture in a public or staff restroom, consider installing faucets that flow at 0.5 gallon per minute or less, or even metered faucets, which would deliver more than 0.25 gallons per cycle. That wraps it up for plumbing fixtures. Now we'll move into some areas of laundry that you can consider. You may have a couple of different types of laundry equipment, including machines for your guests to use or larger, more industrial-style laundry equipment to wash your linens and towels. First, we'll talk about coin operation, card operated, or no-pay commercial washers, which you may have for your guest use. EPAC set different requirements for top-loading and front-loading machines, 8.5 and 5.5 gallons per cubic foot of capacity, respectively. All Energy Star labeled models, whether top or front-loading, use no more than 4.5 gallons per cubic foot or less. For O&M in your guest laundry rooms, you can consider posting signage asking guests to run full loads whenever possible. You may also want to consider replacing your inefficient commercial washers with Energy Star models, which will save you energy and water. If you have an in-house hotel and linen laundry, the type of equipment you have may vary depending on your laundry throughput. Multi-load washers can handle about 80 pounds of laundry per load and use less than 8 gallons per cycle per cubic foot. Washer extractors can handle 800 pounds of laundry per load and use only 2 to 4 gallons of water per pound of fabric. Tonneau washers are the largest style laundry equipment, able to handle 2,000 pounds of laundry per hour. They're also the most efficient, using less than 2 gallons of water per pound of fabric. A quick way to see savings in your laundry operations is to use your equipment less. You can implement a linen and towel reuse program in order to save water and washing. You can also encourage your laundry room staff to weigh the laundry and ensure that the washers are filled to capacity. In addition, make sure your laundry equipment supplier is providing an ongoing maintenance program to ensure the washers are operating as efficiently as possible, and consult with your chemical supplier for methods that may require fewer wash and rinse cycles. If you can, program your washers for the least amount of wash and rinse cycles you need for each load. For washer extractors, consider retrofitting your equipment with a water reuse recycling system. Simple recycling systems reuse water from the final rinse for the first wash of the next load. The final rinse water rarely needs to be treated prior to reuse, and these systems can save between 10 and 35% of the water needed. More complex recycling systems treat reclaimed water from wash and rinse cycles for reuse in all cycles of the next load. These systems can save up to 85%. Ozone systems are another laundry fit retrofit option. They can be installed on all types of commercial laundry systems, but are less common with tunnel washers. They work by injecting ozone, which is a powerful oxidant that reacts with dirt and organic matter to lift stains. As a result, you won't need as much high-temperature water to remove stains, and therefore you can run your machines at reduced temperature to save energy. In addition, your wash cycles may require less detergent and chemicals, so less rinsing may be required. These types of systems work best for lightly soiled laundry, and they can save between 10 and 25% per load. If you're looking for laundry equipment replacements, consider installing multi-load washers that use no more than 8 gallons per cubic foot. Replace your washer extractor with models that have built-in water recycling that can use less than 2.5 gallons of water per pound of fabric. And if you have enough laundry demand, consider replacing your washer extractors with a tunnel washer, since these are the most efficient types of equipment. In addition, choose machines that support remote diagnosis by the manufacturer to minimize maintenance that may be required. This slide summarizes the potential savings that you could see from replacing your existing fixtures and equipment with more efficient models, though your savings could be more if your fixtures and equipment predate Energy Policy Act requirements. In general, WaterSense and Energy Star labeled products can save you at least 20% over standard models. To put those savings into perspective, we have an example here. If a hotel with approximately 150 guest rooms replaced all of its older inefficient fixtures in the guest rooms with WaterSense labeled models, it could save nearly 760,000 gallons of water and $7,000 each year. That's enough water to wash more than 300,000 pounds of laundry. Of course, total gallons and dollars of savings will be very facility specific. It will depend on the rating of your current fixtures and equipment, the efficiency of the models you're intending to retrofit or replace, and your hotel's water, sewer, and energy rates. WaterSense at Work provides detailed calculations to help you understand water use and savings from restroom and laundry retrofit and replacement options. On this slide is just an example of the calculation guidance provided in the BMPs. These types of equations are provided for just about every type of water-using fixture or equipment you might find in your hotel. Once you know how much water you could save by completing a particular project, you can determine the total project cost and the cost of water, wastewater, and energy that may be saved. This information will allow you to assess simple payback, which is the project cost divided by the utility cost savings. Once you've identified projects that may be cost-effective for your hotel, WaterSense at Work also provides useful information regarding project financing. In addition, we reviewed financing options during the Assess, Track, and Realize Payback webinar in detail a few weeks ago. If you weren't able to attend that webinar, consider viewing it once it's posted to the WaterSense website. And as we mentioned earlier, and many of you were interested in, we're in the process of developing a water use tool to help facility personnel conduct a water assessment and evaluate and prioritize projects. The tool will address all of the major water use areas of a hotel, and on the screen here is a screenshot from the guest room tab of the tool. So you put in your basic facility information regarding your existing equipment and hotel and occupancy rate, and the tool will estimate your hotel's water use from each end use and provide recommendations for potential water savings projects. Once the tool is released, WaterSense will host a training to help hotels learn how to conduct a water assessment and use the tool.
Great. Thank you, Kim. Now let's take another quick break to answer any questions that you may have for Stephanie or Kim on our best management practices for restrooms and laundries and any of the other content that has been presented so far. So we have a few questions that had already come in during the presentation. For example, have there been tests done to prove that sensor faucets are more efficient? The group I'm with believes that often these sensors stick, and is this just a myth that the sensor faucets stick?
I don't think there's any studies to say that they're more efficient. I think the reason people tend to use them now is for hygiene purposes. So people in public restrooms don't have to touch the fixture to turn them on.
Okay. Great. And how can one find the water use rate for larger extractors? Rich finds it hard to find it in the manufacturer information online for older units. Do you have any suggestions on finding the water use rate for larger extractors if it's not online in the manufacturer information?
If you're able to contact the manufacturer, they may be able to provide you that information, or maybe you can dig up some old documentation you have when you purchased the unit that might have that information.
Maybe even a dealer or distributor of the equipment might be able to help you. But yeah, no, we don't have any really good ideas for you. I'm sure you've thought of all those.
Okay, thanks. And some people have heard that ozone doesn't remove certain types of oil. Do you have any, have you seen that in your research into laundry studies?
We have not done a lot of extensive research on ozone systems. There are some resources referenced in the BMPs that may provide some information on studies that may have been done on ozone systems, so I would check there first. And
but if we do say that it's best for lightly soiled for linen, for lightly soiled things, so maybe it isn't really very good at removing some kinds of oil or oily things.
That makes sense. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions at this time, so I'd like to go ahead and invite Brandon with San Antonio Water Systems to tell us about the water savings that they've achieved by 3 hotels that are participating in SAW's WaterSaver Hotel program. Brandon? Brandon, you might still be muted on your line.
Are you there?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thanks,
okay.
Brandon.
Yeah, I think it was on the other side. Apologize for that. Well, the first thing I want to do is actually thank the EPA, Stephanie and Kim and Laura for actually putting this session on, as well as going through and actually creating the BMP guides, these workshops, and especially the WaterSense tool. One of the things that was interesting when they asked me to do this for me was when we started working with our hotels here in San Antonio, we didn't have these tools. We actually had to create a lot of the things that are mentioned here and actually prove those numbers. So I definitely appreciate having the ability for other utilities, other hotels, people in the industry, having the ability to utilize the tools. So with that, what I want to do today is basically all those things that were thrown out there in the very beginning. I want to show you guys some case studies and show that these numbers are actually good. They actually do work. They save water. They save money. And they don't limit the hotel in any certain capacity. So when SAWS first started looking into the hotel industry in 2006, we kind of had to do our research, and looking at it, There are more than 40,000 hotel rooms available citywide, and 13,000 of those are in our downtown area. So that puts our tourism industry as second largest. That brings in about 21 million visitors per year. Economically, it's about a $9 billion industry, and that hospitality industry has grown 85% in the last 10 years. So next slide, please. So as we started looking into it, we had to make a decision. And so we started looking at the hotels in San Antonio, and there basically were more hotels being built in San Antonio than any other city in the nation. And so the wise water use may not be a top concern of the visitors, but it definitely was a sizable arena with that 21 million a year visitor rating. So it's definitely something that we saw as an untapped conservation potential. Next slide, please. So what was the work plan? Well, we definitely wanted, as we started looking into this, is to be able to take advantage of the things that we could. We didn't want to really dictate anything. We wanted to create and implement a WaterSaver Hotel program that was comprehensive. And it basically, it was a way for us to garner water savings. And it was also, we wanted to show it as an economic benefit for our partners, the hotels. The water savings that we were trying to obtain, we needed to do it in a cost-effective manner. And by the way, one of the things that we're seeing here, and you could see through some of the data and the statistics that were presented previously, that the water and wastewater cost can represent more than half of the total operating cost of a facility. So it's big, and we want to make sure that as we're looking at trying to save water, save money, we want to make sure, I can't say this enough, make sure that as we do it, that we're also going to preserve the quality of services a hotel provides. We don't want to hinder any of the potential customer service aspect of the hotel. We don't want to have the ability for a hotel to say, well, you know what, my customer was less satisfied with my building or my facility, so he may move somewhere else. The other thing that we wanted to do is, like I said in the very beginning, I didn't have all the statistics and the WaterSense tool to prove these savings. So I had to develop a lot of these different things. And so as we put the hotel program on the table, we needed to do a couple of things. We needed to convince the powers that be here at SAWS that this was going to work, that it was going to save the water that we predicted, and do it at a cost-effective rate. And we also needed to convince the hotels that if they move in this direction, they're not going to lose customer service, they're not going to have issues with the hotel, and they are going to actually save the water that we're saying. Next slide, please. So how do we do the proving part of it? And it was a big factor because we were putting a lot of money towards these retrofits, and so we needed to make sure that we were analyzing up front and doing our evaluation and providing proof and evidence that we had a fundamentally sound economic investment. And so the way I wanted to look at it, and I still do, is that as SAWS spends money, that money that we are actually investing, we're investing in the saved water. So we're investing in a product that ultimately is going to save water, and we want to do it, again, at a fundamentally sound economic way. We don't want to save water that doesn't make economic sense, and we need to make sure that we provide the evidence that it does actually work. And I'll show you some of this stuff here shortly. Next slide, please. The funding. A lot of people ask us this question. I would really, really like to take credit for how our funding is set up, but I can't. I have to give a lot of credit to our forefathers, or the people that worked here at SAWS before I did, and some of the citizens that actually served on some of our conservation groups at the time. So our funding basically comes from in the commercial side, it comes from a meter fee, and it's based on the size of the meter. And a portion of that meter fee, and it's dedicated monthly, goes into our conservation fund. These conservation funds are then utilized to pay for these projects. So in essence, really what's happening is each business or each commercial business that has a meter is stocking money away in a savings account that they can then utilize later on. So, I mean, it really is essentially, it's a water conservation savings account. And I just actually have the pleasure and privilege to dole some of that back out and do some of these conservation projects. So next slide, please. So now that we've looked at, you know, kind of where we came from and when we started in 2006, I'm going to show you just 3 examples. We have dealt with primarily the majority of the older constructed hotels here in San Antonio. I would say probably in the 80 to 85, maybe even the 90% range of the hotels. And I'm just going to show you three examples. The first one here is a Holiday Inn. It's over by our airport, so it's kind of served. Its guests are more kind of geared towards coming in and out, maybe on the weekends for a week. It's not really a convention hotel per se. The hotel has 397 guest rooms. It was built in 1981, which was before the Energy Policy Act was put into place, so it has high flow fixtures. And what we did in this hotel, again, remember, we didn't want to dictate everything. We wanted to ask the hotel to think about a laundry program or a linen program, but we didn't want to say, okay, if you're gonna partner with us, you have to do all these things. So we went in and we started looking at it. So this project here is actually a turnkey project, meaning that we paid for all of the fixtures being replaced. So what we upgraded was the toilets, the faucets, and the guest bathrooms, as well as the public restrooms, and all of the shower heads in all the rooms. We did this hotel actually started in 2007. The products that we used, they met and sometimes actually exceeded the current WaterSense labeled products that we have currently. And this little graph here kind of shows you where we were, and the fixtures and the flush volumes and the gallons per minute rating across the board. Which is interesting here because this hotel actually had 2 different, it actually had an extension, and it was built a little bit later after that 1981 year. And so they had 3.5 gallon per flush toilets there. The original hotel had 5 gallon per flush toilets, and the original 2.2 aerators and the original 2.5 gallon per minute shower heads. And you can see on the next column what we went to. We went to a 1.1 gallon per flush toilet across the board. We went with a 1.5 gallon per minute aerator in all of the guest rooms. We used a 0.5 gallon per minute aerator in all of the public restrooms, and we used a 1.75 gallon per minute shower head. Next slide, please. So again, one of the things that I was tasked with was not only making this happen, but actually proving, predicting and proving it actually worked. So we had to do a lot of research up front, and also we had to track these hotels very extensively at the end. So we actually reduced the water use per occupied room from 202 gallons to 132 gallons. That it resulted in a 35% overall reduction. Now remember, what's interesting about this number, if you remember back when Stephanie was talking, she said that typically in a hotel about 30% of their water use comes from the restroom. Well, our primary work with this project was in the restroom. And look, we're getting a 35%. So yes, we're predicting, and we're also seeing that it did actually work. Now, my primary, before I started the project, I had to go through the hotel. We looked at occupancy. We looked at number of people per room, so on and so forth. And I actually predicted that if we did this project, that the hotel would save a little over 7 million gallons of water a year. Well, lo and behold, at the end of it, it actually saved right at 7 million gallons of water a year. The other thing that was a side benefit was the reduction in the hot water demand because of the lowered shower head volumes. They actually saved 330,000 kilowatt hours of electricity, which all of that combined, the water and the utility savings, equated about $70,000 for the hotel in utility savings. Saws, we actually spent about $90,000 on the total upgrades, and we did that at a very cost-effective rate, being actually cheaper than going out and buying additional water resource supplies. The next slide, please. Now again, I told you guys that we did extensive before and after. This slide right here, this graph, actually is showing you 2006, 2007, and 2010 years in the hotel. And they're offset by occupancy rate. Okay? So I told you earlier that we started the retrofit in 2007. So you're seeing the kind of the reddish purplish line, 2006 is above. You're seeing the green line, 2007, which is about the time we started the retrofit, and then the blue line or the purplish line, 2010, after kind of everything started settling down. And that represents that 35% reduction. So we tracked it, we predicted it, we tracked it, and it did actually work. Next slide, please. The next hotel, actually, that we started working with, and actually this was the very first hotel that we started working with whenever we opened up our WaterSaver Hotel program. This is the oldest hotel in our downtown area. It was built in 1968 for the World Fair. It had 470 guest rooms. The upgrade, again, this was a turnkey situation. On this specific piece, we upgraded the toilets, the faucets, the shower heads, utilizing, again, above or equal to WaterSense labeled products. This hotel had a prior project done. It was probably in the 2004, 2005 range. We replaced all of their water-cooled ice machines. And I'll show you how that's significant here in just a minute. Next slide, please. So at the end, or in the beginning, they started off at 209 gallons per room. At the end, they're down to 107 gallons per room. An overall reduction of 49%. My predicted value was 48%. So I actually got more savings than I actually predicted. Total across the board, we should have seen a 24 million gallon per year savings, and we actually saw a 26 million gallon per year savings. Again, we also saw that added bonus of 480,000. Uh-oh, something just happened to my computer. I'm not sure what's happening. Oh, no. Okay, there it is. Sorry about that, guys. The hotel saw an $80,000 reduction in their utility savings, and for us at SAWS, we actually had an investment of about $110,000. Next slide, please. Okay, so again, proving. I showed you. I talked about the ice machines. In the very beginning, that red line at the very top was the hotel's overall usage before we did the ice machines. The next line that you see is an average water use between the years of 2001 and 2006. Interestingly enough, we began the retrofit in March of 2007, the very first day of March. We did our retrofit in less than 30 days, and you can see that dramatic drop in the water consumption on the green line. And then the rest of the lines go from 2008, 2009, and it gives you an indication that they are static and they're staying the water savings is actually is continuing on. It's not. We didn't have it for 1 year, and then the next year the water savings actually went back up. This is actually showing us that the savings is there and it stays for a period of time. Next slide, please. Now the next hotel, I'm going to move away from the bathroom retrofits to more of the laundry side. This hotel, it's a Westin Riverwalk hotel. It was built after the 1992 time period, so it has low-flow toilets in it already. Well, the hotel came to us and they wanted to work on their laundry facility. And so what they did, and what they decided to do, is they replaced 3 125-pound washers and one 55-pound washer extractor. They also installed a last rinse, first wash reclaim, which was discussed earlier. And in doing that, they actually went from a 2.8 gallon per pound prior water usage to a 0.99 gallon per pound of water usage, so an overall 65% reduction. Now that 65% reduction, 45% of the reduction actually came from replacing machines, so upgrading more efficient machines. The additional 20%, or the remaining 20%, was a result of installing the last rinse, first wash reclaim. And so our estimated water savings was a little over 2.2 million gallons annually. Next slide, please. This project was actually done in the form of a rebate. This was not a turnkey. So we paid on the water savings at the end. The total project cost for the hotel was $79,000. My total rebate to the hotel was $27,000. The estimated annual water and sewer savings came up to $11,000, a little over $11,000, and the estimated annual energy savings was almost $9,000. So if you put all that stuff together, do the math out, the return on investment for the hotel was 2.6 years. Okay. Next slide, please. Now with that, again, I would like to thank EPA for putting all this together. I hope that we've shed some light on some of the things, proven the cases, not just saying that it'll happen, but actually showcasing that it actually is true, that some of the numbers and the predictive values are out there. So with that, if you guys have any other questions or comments, feel free to ask away.
Thank you for that great presentation, Brandon. So we have a few questions that came in over the chat box. So first, Rodney wants to know, how did you decide which hotels would get the upgrades, and how did the funding mechanism work?
Basically, it was a first come, first serve. We had been looking at the hotel industry for years, but we had not been able to really, for lack of better terms, crack the nut, if you will. And so one of the things that was really key here is we made a commitment to save the water, but the years prior we would only maybe give the fixtures to the hotels, or we'd go in and say, hey guys, we want to retrofit the hotel and here's the toilets, and they go, nah, no, never mind, we really don't want to do that. So we were scratching our heads for years, and the thing that made it key for this to work, in my opinion, is we did it turnkey. But when we made the recommendation to do it turnkey, it also made us do a lot more evaluation and analysis and predictive measures, as well as following through. So, in order for us to determine which hotel, they actually came to us in most cases. Hopefully I answered your question.
Great. And did you all pay for all of the upgrades?
In the first two, anytime we were doing basically the bathroom renovations or upgrades, we were doing turnkey, meaning that yes, we were paying for everything, and the hotel was only their only job was to hold the door open for us, if you will. The last case study that I showed was in a form of a rebate. So we paid a portion of the total cost of the project based on the water savings that was seen.
Great. Thanks, Brandon. And Robert wants to know, were any upgrades, replacements, or retrofits performed as part of the central laundry plant?
Yes, the central laundry plant in the last case study in the Weston, that was the area where the retrofits occurred. And again, they had, if I remember right, they had 3 125-pound extractors and 1 55-pound machine doing all of their laundry. And they primarily handled their linens. They didn't really do a lot of the towels, but they did do all their linens in-house.
Okay. And what was included in the ice machine retrofit?
Ice machine retrofit, a very interesting thing here in the South and some areas across the U.S. where a lot of people were utilizing a single pass system to cool the condenser in an ice machine. We had that phenomenon here as well. So they had an ice machine. Actually, they had 2 ice machines per floor, and we rebated on, again, the aspect of the water savings. We didn't pay for the entire ice machine, but we did provide an incentive rebate for moving those ice machines out and going to an air-cooled and having that water reduction.
Okay. Great, thank you. And how did you address hotel standards in regards to the restroom retrofits? And were hotels satisfied with the replacements?
Very, very good question. I kind of commented on that in the very beginning, that one of our goals was, well, when we were having difficulty getting into the industry, one of the things that everybody kept saying was, well, you know, I want to make sure that my customers are satisfied, and you know, customer satisfaction is a big key for the hotel industry, making sure we get those return customers, so on and so forth. So we made that one of our goals. We didn't want to save the water if it was going to hinder any of those aspects of the hotel services. And to answer your question, we actually have had nothing but success stories. Very, very few, if any, complaints. I know of one situation I remember very clearly. It wasn't one of these 3 that I'm showcasing here, but you know, they go through and they have their customer service satisfaction ratings across the board, and one of the things was a shower experience. Well, we came in and did a retrofit, and we changed all the shower heads, and their actual customer service rating went up. I mean, we reduced their consumption in the shower by 50%, and the satisfaction rating went up. That's phenomenal, and that's something that we definitely want to showcase, and I think it's one of the success stories.
Yeah, that is wonderful. And so, how do you think we can get other municipalities around the country to start offering the types of rebates and funding that you've been providing?
You know, it's an interesting. I mean, it's a small group. There's a lot of utilities out there. I shouldn't say a small group, but there's a lot of utilities out there that offer this stuff. And what I would suggest to any hotel or any customer is, when you get home, call your utility. They may have a program for you. If they don't have it may not be called a WaterSaver Hotel program. It may not be called the H2O Challenge for hotels, but there may be something that they can work with you on. And I think that, you know, as we're moving forward in a more of a challenging time of water resources, I do believe that the utilities, if asked, will find a way to help their customers.
Great. And for the toilet retrofits, were you replacing the china or installing the low-flow retrofit valves?
In both of the situations where the two case studies, we were using tank-style toilets. We replaced tank-style toilets with tank-style toilets. But we did do hotels that had flush valve, industrial flush valves in them as well. So not only were we doing, and typically the situation for us is if a hotel had a flush valve fixture, it was a lot older of a hotel and a lot smaller, which is kind of interesting because typically in that time frame, the flush valve toilet was thought to be less expensive and it was going to last longer. So we did some of them, but we didn't do as many as the tank-style toilets.
Okay. And did you all do any education and outreach about these efforts to your hotel staff groups or the hotel guests? And do you think, if so, did you think that the education and outreach was helpful?
It's a good question, by the way. The one thing that I did, and I will say this, it was 2006 and we were going into the hotels, and for the most part, the hotel industry, I don't know if I remember one of our convention hotels downtown not actually having a linen program. I believe pretty much every one of them had a linen program, asking guests if they, if you don't want your bed sheets washed every day, so on and so forth, you didn't have to. But the staff within the hotel and the management, one of the things that I remember speaking to them about was, is it working? And I remember a hotel engineer telling me, the thing that works about it is if we get it in the room for the guest. And then sometimes, even if the guest says, no, I don't want it, the staff is so amped up on the fact of customer service and making sure that they provide a good stay for the visitor, that they would just go ahead and do it anyway. So it's kind of defeating the purpose. But we did a lot of outreach to the hotels, and we allowed the hotel to do its own outreach to its customer, and let them dictate how they were going to tell their customers that they were saving water and they were being environmentally friendly and being good stewards of the community here in San Antonio.
Wonderful. And finally, were there issues with the additional heat load to the floors when going to air-cooled units?
That is an excellent question. In this situation, there was a little bit of heat load added, but particularly, I wish I had a floor plan, because on this floor plan, the ice machines are on the far extents of the left and rights of the hotel. And so it actually helped a little bit to have them that far apart, but yes, it did actually add a little bit more heat load to the overall hotel.
Wonderful. And do you work with hotels at all regarding their cooling tower, water efficiency, maintenance, and sub-metering for evaporation, or just kind of the laundry and plumbing aspects?
No, if it's a commercial building and it uses water, we actually look at it. There are some of the newer hotels going to air-cooled equipment. We actually have in our downtown area, we have a heating and cooling loop that a lot of them are hooked up on, so there's not as many cooling towers downtown, but there are some. What we actually implemented in 2005, we actually implemented a city ordinance that dictates if you are operating a cooling tower in the city limits, that cooling tower must operate at a minimum of 4 cycles of concentration. So the water that's coming in, the TDS or the total dissolved solids, must be 4 times greater before you're allowed to blow it down or release it. So that helps a lot. It's actually basically code to be able to do that. if a building calls me and says, hey, I want to go from 4 cycles to 5.5 cycles, go above what standard code says, then yes, I have rebates available for them to do that.
Great. And are all the hotels in the San Antonio area part of the water conservation saving account, or do they kind of need to approach you to get involved?
The way it works, if you are a commercial customer of the San Antonio water system, every month that you pay your bill, a dedicated portion of that goes into the conservation fund. I don't earmark it. I don't say this is Hotel A's or this is Hotel B's or C's or D's or whatever. It's going into a fund. So if a particular hotel wants to access that fund, they need to come and have a discussion with us. But it's not earmarked just for that one specific property. It's going into a bigger pool of money for all commercial customers to use.
Okay, that makes sense. So do we have any other questions? Well, I believe that was our last question. So to wrap up, let's review the webinar now. Stephanie?
Okay, thank you, Brandon, for that really great presentation on what you did in San Antonio. I think it was really informative. And thanks to everybody who was on the webinar for those really great questions. I think we learned a lot more about what Brandon was talking about and what he did in that presentation by your questions. So let's spend a minute or two going over what we talked about today. Water use in restrooms and laundries can account for nearly half of a hotel's total water use, so it's important to focus on savings in those areas. You can easily implement water-efficient O&M practices that can save you water with little cost, capital cost required. Replacing old, inefficient restroom and laundry equipment can result in significant water savings, have a quick and relatively simple payback, and don't necessarily result in complaints or increased complaints or dissatisfaction among your guests, which is very important. You can replace your guest room tank-type toilets, shower heads, and faucets with WaterSense labeled models. In your public restrooms, you can replace urinals with WaterSense labeled models, and hopefully sometime towards the end of this year, we'll actually have flushometer valve toilets with the WaterSense label on it that will be available as well. You can ensure that your public restroom faucets flow at only half a gallon per minute or less, and consider installing ENERGY STAR qualified washing machines and installing water recycling or ozone systems where it's appropriate for large linen washers. And if you're looking for some other low-hanging fruit, here are some other things you can tackle right away. Check your toilets, showers, and faucets for leaks. Double check that the flushometer valve inserts you've stocked match the rated flush volumes on your toilets and urinals, and install those half-gallon per minute or less aerators in public washrooms. Also, you can install WaterSense labeled shower heads, and you can think about starting a linen reuse program in your hotel where it makes sense. So we have, as we said, we have a number of other webinars coming up. I saw there were some questions about HVAC systems and mechanical systems. We're going to have a topic on that in May. The next webinar will be on outdoor water use at the middle of April, April 17th. We're going to talk about our new water use tool, which is the one that helps you prioritize your projects, on May 29th. And then we'll talk about how to talk about what you're doing to your guests, to the community, and to other stakeholders on June 26th. And then we'll have a whole session on commercial kitchens and water savings there on July 17th. As we've said, all the webinars are recorded, and the ones we've done recently, we'll be starting to post those soon, and you'll be able to get this one as well. And so you can encourage anyone in your hotel system or at your utility who wasn't able to make today's call to go online and check those out. You can also go to the H2Otel Challenge website, which the link is listed here, and get all this information that we've provided. Next slide. Finally, I wanted to let you know a little bit about this upcoming program called the Battle of the Buildings Challenge, which is being hosted by Energy Star next month. This is a coast-to-coast competition among commercial buildings to work off the waste and reduce energy and water use. All commercial buildings can participate. You can participate as a team amongst your other portfolio buildings or as an individual building. And the baseline calendar year is 2013, and you're going to be comparing that to the 2014 usage. Registration opens April 16th to May 16th on the Battle of the Buildings webpage. EPA will announce the 2013 winners on April 16th and launch the 2014 competition on the same day. All competitors can use the portfolio manager to enter your building information. And last year, in 2012, on average, the competitors saved $25,000 and reduced energy use by over 8% in the one-year competition period. So it was a really great challenge. So before we wrap up, I'd like to see if anyone on the call has a case study they'd be interested in sharing for one of our upcoming webinars. We're always looking for hotels and really great case studies to promote on our website and in our webinars. In particular, we're looking for hotels that would like to share their experience with mechanical improvements or commercial kitchen upgrades. So if you think you might have an interesting case study to present, you can type your name and information into the chat box now, or you can think about it and call the WaterSense helpline, and we'll connect you with our H2Otel Challenge staff. So thank you again for attending this presentation. As I said, the webinar was recorded and will be posted on the website in the future. You'll receive an email when it's coming, and you'll receive a follow-up email today, most likely with the, you'll receive a follow-up email about today's webinar, and we're going to try and include a PDF of the slides that you've seen. Feel free to forward information to our colleagues, and we look forward to talking to you again at our upcoming training webinars. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.